Well, yesterday was wild, wasn't it? Absolutely crazy. My arms, my shoulders, my back is still sore from the weight of the deer as I was carrying it. Well, that was something. And you know, it's not the first rescue I done. I also did multiple other rescues of different birds, and then at one point I was rescuing a little piglet of a boar that actually Drake found that I was certain it's dead because it wasn't moving, and Drake was sniffing around. I was inspecting it. As I was leaning over, it suddenly moved, and I was like, what the hell? And let me call Drake. I don't know where he is. And it suddenly moved, and that's when I realized that it's still alive, and it was covered in flies, and there were even maggots. And so I took it and realized its heart is still beating and it's still alive. It's just extremely exhausted, and it was pooped all over, similar to the deer actually. You know, it had a runny, smelly poop all over, and I carried all the way in one arm, trying to sort of keep with the other arm keep Drake at bay because he was losing his mind. And I carried it for good half an hour because it was far away. It was a good half an hour back home. I called the rescue station. They couldn't come for it. I was afraid it's gonna die if it's not gonna get looked after soon. So I drove all the way to the rescue station myself. I put the piglet there, and unfortunately I called after a couple of days later, and they said they didn't make it. So that was one of those. That was probably the second sort of most strenuous rescue and sort of a biggest rescue I've done here since I moved here. But this one, that was crazy. And so I'm not gonna, you know, sort of stretch you anymore and let you know how it all transpired and what happened after I brought it back home. And as I mentioned in the description in the yesterday's video of the many lessons I've learned along the way, well, lesson number one: rescue stations don't take adult deer. And it's not adult. It was, you know, it was not grown up deer. It was like, I don't know how many months it had, but it was not a fawn. So not a little deer, quote unquote, anymore, but also not a full-blown adult, but already in the category of an adult, right? Well, so the first lesson learned is that rescue stations, they do not take deer. And the reason for it is that, which I didn't know, by the way, and the reason for it is that deer is in fact a property of the gamekeepers, which is, well, you know my opinion on that, but yeah, it is apparently a property of the gamekeepers, and they are the ones responsible for every sort of game animal out there. Therefore, rescue stations have nothing to do and cannot have anything to do with deer and other game that is being hunted, and unless they have a specific permission by the gamekeepers to look after it, you know, which sometimes happens, like when a deer is ran down by a car, it's hit by a car and it's got broken bones and all that, then a rescue station is sort of eligible to look after that deer. But if it's some case like the one that was yesterday, then unfortunately they are not going to take it. And as you can imagine, that was very frustrating for me because I had a deer in my garden that was apparently sick, and I was calling I called about 4 different or 3 different spots. One of them being a coordination coordination project of all the rescue stations for entire Czech Republic, and I always hit the wall with them saying, "Oh, that is the responsibility of the gamekeeper." So I called my neighbor. I asked him, because he was a former gamekeeper, if he does have any contacts. He pointed me to another neighbor who has also been used to be a gamekeeper, and he had some contacts on, actually, and that's when it gets interesting and funny. He had some contacts on someone from the Order of the Knights, what was it? Knights of the Cross with the Red Star, which was, I was like, what? And apparently the Order, as I was covering several videos on them, this religious order apparently not only owns these forests somewhere, some of these forests and lands and buildings and ponds around here, they also are tied to the gamekeepers, and many of probably the order members are also gamekeepers. So that's a pretty interesting full circle going on here. So I called one of those guys, and he called another guy, and so the conclusion of it was that there was a gamekeeper that lived in our village that is going to come pick the deer, up, you know. That was the plan. Well, by the way, look at these beautiful, and God, I don't know the English name of it, but I'm definitely gonna post it in the subtitles. But look at that beauty, how it's flowered. Beautiful. There are many more to come there. Yeah, spring flowers popping up. Well, so that was the conclusion. I've made probably, I don't freaking know, 10, 12 different calls. It was extremely frustrating situation for me, really, because I couldn't let Drake out. He was inside. He was like whining, obviously, because he was excited from all that. I really needed to get back to my other things. Like I need to get back to, you know, tending to the chickens. I needed to get back to work, and I freaking couldn't, because I was waiting what's going to happen. I was waiting for the gamekeeper, and the kingkeeper was absolutely nowhere to be seen. But before I get to what actually happened later, I'm going to tell you that I found out what was wrong with the deer, because throughout the many calls, various people confirmed the same thing, and apparently that symptom that it had, this runny, smelly poop, and the weakness and apathy, apparently those are very well-known symptoms of a canola poisoning. Now that's very interesting. I didn't know that, but apparently the brassica plants, you know, the sort of a cabbage family into which canola falls into. By the way, another name for canola is also rapeseed, but I think canola is now like more widely used term, because rape, you know, I mean, yeah. So apparently canola, as the other cabbage plants from that family, canola contains a substance called SMCO, which is short for s-methylcystein sulfoxide, which apparently when they consume the plant and consume this compound with it, that substance turns and sort of metabolizes into a toxin inside their stomachs, and that toxin attacks their blood cells. It sort of breaks down their blood cells, which cause them anemia. It attacks their internal organs and their functions, and it can cause blindness, it can cause organ failure, and it almost always ends up with death of the animal. Now, the canola plants apparently there are varieties of canola plants nowadays. They do not contain this SMCO substance, and it is up to the farmer or the agriculture, like whoever maintains the field, and it's up to them to not use the particular strain and the particular variety of canola that does not contain SMCO. But apparently some farmers don't give a shit and they just plant this one either way, anyway, and this is what then happens, because if there is a food scarcity in the winter, then the deer sometimes do go for canola, because the sort of modifying of this plant made it not bitter anymore, therefore it tastes good, and they go for it and they get poisoned. And these are pretty much the symptoms: the runny poop, essentially a diarrhea, and weakness, and often blindness of the animal. Apparently you can often... Reiko! I'm not letting Drake spook another animal. Not today, Jesus Christ. Like, I mean, I had enough. I had enough, really, for at least a year. Jesus Christ. Good boy. Nechoď tam, Drejku, jo? Jdeme po svý cestě. Oh, good boy. Yeah, I think it's the season, really. There's like a sense in the air, and animals are active because it's spring. But it's strange because we had 2 springs together already, and this didn't, and in the beginning he was even crazier, but this was not happening, you know? So I don't know, I guess it's just fate, I don't know, whatever. But Drejku, tam nejdeme. I don't know. And sure, you could argue I could walk with him on a leash, but then my life would be hell, his life would be hell. He sucks on a leash, man. He constantly suffocates himself because he pushes too much. And you know, he's the kind of dog that, like, you can see he needs the freedom, and he needs the sort of the movement and all that. And since he's 3-legged, you know, he's slow, and therefore, sure, I mean, he can run after certain animal and then you know, kind of give that animal a stressful moment, but there is like rarely, and if ever, a moment when it could actually do anything to the animal. But unfortunately, yesterday you could see that there are situations when that can happen, even when he has 3 legs, you know. But yeah. But anyway, I'm letting him run free because he is, you know, being a street dog. I mean, I could see when I was walking with him on a leash in the very beginning, when I adopted him. I was doing that for more than a half a year because he was, well, we had to get used to each other, and he might, I don't know, like, you know, make a dash and, you know, disappear for I don't know how long. And before we trusted each other and all that, I was walking him on a leash, and I could see how unhappy he was. I mean, if you would see the difference between him on a leash and him being running free, there is, like, you could see there was a raven. You could see how unhappy he's on a leash. I mean, obviously, you know, wouldn't you be unhappy if somebody was holding you back and you couldn't go anywhere, you know? And it's not just him, it's me too, you know? It's like, I hate it. I hate dragging him on a leash, you know? Fucking sucks. I like when we have our own freedoms and do our own thing and have our own pace and all that. I'm not justifying dogs running free, running free without a leash, because some dogs do have extremely strong prey diet. They do have 4 legs, and they can be large, and they can be really dangerous to other animals. And in that case, it is definitely necessary for them to be on a leash, unfortunately, because if they're killing animals and if they're doing harm to, I don't know, swans and deers and rabbits and all that, that's not good. Just like it's not good when cats are killing birds. And that's a chiff-chaff, by the way. When cats are killing frogs and lizards and birds and they're killing so many things, by the way. They're absolutely killing machines, you know, cats. And people have cats freely, right? On the garden, it's totally fine, but they kill millions of animals worldwide, like billions even, just on a whim. They're not even eating those animals that they catch. Some do, of course, but mostly no, they just want to kill, right? They just want to catch it. So that's the same thing. So if you have a dog that is like that, you know, it's fast, it's big, and it can kill, then it's certainly not advisable to let it run free and you know, unless it's trained and you can call it. You can call the dog. Like if you see there is a deer and it comes after it and you call and it stops, then it's all good. You know, if you have your dog trained, then by all means, don't use a leash. But I think if there is a strong prey dive, you cannot prevent that thing from happening. And why I let Drake run free is because he's got 3 legs, he's slow, so he cannot really harm any animal. Well, if it's not something like the situation yesterday, obviously, when the deer is sick and slow, therefore, yes, that can happen, unfortunately. But if it's a healthy animal, that there is no way that Drake could do anything to it because it's way too slow, you know. And I'm always there to step in and always there to do the best I can to prevent anything like that from happening. You know, I'm not the kind of owner. It's like, oh, let him go. Just let him have some fun, you know. Definitely freaking not, you know. I want to let him run free, but I want him not to be harmful to any wildlife out there, because that's not what we're here for, you know. And he's got everything he needs at home. He's got all the food, all the shelter and everything, so he does not need to hunt wild animals. That is definitely not something that's gonna pass not under my watch, you know. So I just wanted to clear that out and just wanted to say that I definitely do not sort of, how to put it, vouch for, or like I do not support dogs without a leash. If they are fast, big, and have a strong prey drive and they're not trained, then unfortunately there is no other way but to have it on a leash for everyone's well-being, let's say, you know. And it's unfortunately that has to be done, you know. And I definitely have that stance on this. And the same goes for cats, you know. Like if it's spring and it's a time when there are chicks hatching and there are young birds, I'm like, either I would have something to prevent the cat from catching all those birds and killing all those animals, or I would just have the cat inside. I mean, I'm sorry, but if it kills thousands and thousands and thousands of animals yearly, it's just, you know. And cat, like, you could argue, well, but cat is a natural predator, but unfortunately it's not, and it's not in its domesticated form, and it's not in situation when it's actually like sort of over, like the population is too large, there's too many of them, they're safe because they have a natural predator, they're well fed, so they're not really hunting to eat, but they're hunting just for fun, you know. It's just like, it's anything but natural, you know. Unfortunately, anything but natural. There are wild cat species in the wild, but that's not our domesticated cats, you know. So they're definitely not like a natural predator, or like, you know, a part of like the nature, the cycle. No, they're not. We made them, you know, their population too large, and we made them we made them a problem. They're not the problem, obviously, you know. Cats are completely innocent in all this. We should be looking at ourselves and say, oh, we fucked up, because we did. That's our problem. That's not the cat's problem, by the way. Let's not, forget that, Cats are completely innocent in all this. It's our own fault, Just want to clear that out. By the way, there's a daffodil growing there, which is pretty cool. Look at that. Such a beautiful daffodil in the forest. How cool is that? I don't know if you can see. Hold on, the screen is, oh, yeah, there. See that? Pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool. And I think there are more daffodils here, probably. I'm not sure, but it looks like daffodils. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of clear that out and say that, that's how I feel about these things. And I also wanted to mention that these animals are completely innocent in all this. They're completely innocent. That's our own fault. We did this. We did. So, sorry, I digressed. So, it was, what happened to the deer was a canola poisoning, and that was the case of it. Fortunately for that deer, it seemed that it didn't eat that much, and it was doing, I don't know where Drake is, hold on. And it was, by Drake is normally not like this, really not. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's, I mean, it's the spring, it's the scents and all that, but he really, really, really is usually stick by me. Oh, there he is. Okay, cool. I thought he went the other way. Yeah, let's go that way, and then I turn back. I just want to finish the story. So, that canola deer, Jesus, no. The deer ate canola and it got poisoned by it. But it didn't eat as much because it was definitely, its a sight, its eyes were functioning, it was not blind, and it had just a runny poop, and it was kind of weak, but not as much, and it could stand. And after a while on the garden, it actually changed different positions. I was watching it, so it stood up and went somewhere, then it lay down, then it ate some grass. It looked quite, it calmed down, and it looked quite well, considering the poisoning. Well, and you know what? I was waiting for that gamekeeper, and I waited an hour, I waited 2 hours, I waited 3 hours. I even called back to that number, those guys, the Knights, the Knights of the Cross with the Red Star. There was a bad reception, so they told me something I didn't quite understand, but whatever. So I waited and I waited and I waited, and of course at a certain point I just gave up and I started working and all that. But I was waiting and waiting and waiting. The darkness set in, it was completely dark, it was evening, and he just did not came for the deer. So I just lost it, and I said, you know what, fuck that. That deer, oh, there's a deer there, see that? And that is a roe deer, and that is a roe deer buck, if that's the right term for it, because you could see the antlers. And fortunately Drake didn't see it, so that is good. We're gonna turn around, and no, they couldn't come here, and we're gonna turn around and go back. So so I kind of lost it. I was like, you know what, fuck that guy, fuck them all. The rescue stations don't want to take them, the gamekeepers don't want to take care of it. It was so frustrating because I was fucking trying to help that deer because it was clearly not doing well. Oh, by the way, I even called the vet, the local vet. I called and I was like asking what could be the cause, like if it could be this and that, and what could be done. So I even consulted the vet. I was really trying my freaking best to help that deer, and everybody turned their back on me. Every single person turned their back. So by the end of the day, when it was dark, the deer was still there on our garden. I was like, you know what, fuck that shit, excuse my language. And I went and opened the gate. I opened the large gate, I opened the small gate, and I said, you know, if it's doing well, which it seemed to be doing quite well on its own, then let it go. Let it go. Let's just, like, you know, set it free. And I think it can do well on its own. It will recover. It seemed like it's doing better and better over these couple of hours. It was eating, you know, which is a good sign. It was eating grass. So I decided to let it go. And at a certain point, the deer stood up and just left through the front gate, and it was gone. And then I closed the gate, and that was it. So the deer, I set it free last evening, and I just hope it's going to be fine. It's going to do well. And I think it's going to be even better off than with the gamekeepers, because what a couple of these people I talked with told me is that most likely they would just kill it, you know, and put it out of its misery. So, and I don't think it was really suffering that much, to be honest. I think it was on the verge of recovery. So I think it's going to actually bounce back out there. And so if this is going to give it a chance and it's going to recover, then I think it's worth it, you know, because I think what would happen most likely if the gamekeeper would come for it is that he would take it and then just shoot it in the head, you know, it's somewhere, you know, somewhere in sort of private, you know, to keep it away. But I think that the deer would be just killed, sort of euthanized, you could say, you know. So I think like that it will have a chance to recover. It's going to lay low somewhere a different part of the forest, and I believe in a couple of days it's gonna get better, and it's gonna recover. So you could say, yeah, that is after all a good ending to this story. I hope it is. Either way, from my side, I think I did an absolute freaking best I could. And I really, really tried. I really did. You know, I really did. And it was stressful. It was really there. I took a lot of time, a lot of effort, and it was in vain. But hey, if I would know that rescue stations don't take deer, I would probably do a different decisions. But hey, well, you learn, right? So that's the conclusion to this story. And see you tomorrow. I'm gonna sign off now.